Joining me now is Jeremy Bash. He's former chief of staff at the CIA and the Department of Defense and an NBC News national security analyst. Jeremy, good to have you with us.
Israel's military objectives, Kate, I think it's important to note, is to try to isolate Gaza City and not to bulldoze the entirety of the Gaza civilian areas.
What Kate Snow failed to mention when she brought on Jeremy Bash was that he leads a consulting firm that, according to the New York Times, worked for Raytheon, which is the defense contractor that makes missile components for Israel's Iron Dome. Brought him on as an expert to talk about the war between Israel and Hamas, and didn't mention that he runs a consulting firm that works for a company that stands to directly profit off of that war. And that is not his only conflict of interest. Now, here's more from a fantastic piece of reporting by The Lever. Bash has close ties to the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, the powerful pro-Israel lobbying group. He was previously a staffer for the group and emceed portions of its annual policy conference in 2019. So this isn't some tangential relationship. This is a direct relationship. He works for AIPAC. And Bash isn't the only person with conflicts of interest that's been popping up on cable news to give their supposed expert opinion. On October 12th, Fox interviewed Michael Allen, who's a managing director and partner of Beacon Global Strategies. That's the same consulting firm that Bash leads. And here's a clip from that interview.
I heard all of these suggestions that the Israelis are going to commit war crimes because they need to go after terrorists in Gaza. So I thought it was outrageous and just sort of speaks to this latent anti-Semitism, which I believe is in all sorts of quarters across the globe.
Now, that same day, CNN interviewed a different official at Beacon. Now, neither Fox nor CNN disclosed their guests' affiliations with the consulting firm. MSNBC and NBC have also interviewed officials at WestExec Advisors, which is a consulting firm that has advised Boeing, who provides GPS guidance bomb kits to Israel. Now, according to the American Prospect, WestExec has also represented Windward, which is an Israeli AI company that creates surveillance software to track ships in real time. And in one interview, John Brennan, who is a principal at WestExec, spoke to none other than Jen Psaki, who previously worked as a senior advisor at WestExec. Here's a clip of Brennan reacting to Biden's trip to Israel, which was just announced at the time of this interview.
Well, I think first of all, it reflects the depth of President Biden's support for Israel and his support for Israel to be able to defend itself against these horrific terrorist attacks. And clearly, he also is going to emphasize to the greatest extent possible the importance of trying to protect civilian life and in Gaza, and to ensure that there's going to be some type of humanitarian relief for all of these thousands, millions of citizens in Gaza who have not had anything to do with these attacks.
Ian, let me just sort of try to make an example for everybody. If one of these cable news hosts brought on a supposed expert on the Middle East to talk about the war between Israel and Hamas, and that person had connections to selling weapons to Hamas, that individual show would be canceled right then and there. They would be fired, so fired, and everyone involved in bringing them on would be fired. But it's fine to bring on all these experts and allow them to give the pro-Israel argument without any disclosure of their direct relationships with the selling of weapons to Israel. These corporations and these organizations that directly benefit financially from selling weapons to Israel is so patently corrupt. And again, shout out to The Lever for this excellent reporting, but it's so patently corrupt and it seems like no one cares. And I'm sure that they're gonna do it more throughout the coming weeks. And as this war continues, they're gonna continue to bring these people on as experts and allow them to deliver this argument that is again going to benefit these organizations, these corporations that they have direct connections to. It's infuriating to watch, and it's so frustrating to know that it's gonna continue to happen.
Yeah, so I think that the people in Washington, if they read the Lever story, they watch this story that we're doing here, they genuinely won't get it. And they'll be like, I don't understand what these radicals are saying. Like, do they not want us to have high paying lobbying jobs? Then how would we pay for our kids' private school? Do they want us to identify every time somebody's a defense contractor on air? That would we spend half the time explaining all the different connections that different people we bring on, we call strategists, are actually all lobbyists for defense contractors or pharmaceutical companies. What do you want us to do? Expose the whole game to the actual viewers? Yeah, that's exactly what we want. Yeah, and there's no way they're going to do it. And so it's fundamentally dishonest. Let's take the most benign example, right? So look, of course, as Ray said, you would never have a Hamas spokesperson and not say that on air, let alone the fact that you'd instantly be fired, but you should be, right? Now, I don't think you should be fired for having a person from AIPAC on. Those are not the same things. AIPAC is deeply problematic in America. I don't agree with their policies, and they fund campaigns against progressives in particular. But obviously, they're not a terrorist group. But they are lobbyists. They're very powerful and influential lobbyists. It is fundamentally deceptive to not explain that they're lobbyists. Even if it's not the same thing, it's certainly relevant. But that's also, I said that's the relatively benign part of it, right? The real problem of it is the money, right? So why are they talking about an axis of evil now? And by the way, they're not even coordinating their talking points anymore. They're like, it doesn't matter. Nobody's guarding the hen house. Just go on and just vomit out war propaganda. No one on TV will challenge you. It's okay. Just let's start another world, just like we did in Iraq. So that's why Mitch McConnell says, "Oh, we got an axis of evil: China, Russia, North Korea, Iran." Not really an axis, and you just made up a bunch of countries. But then Netanyahu doesn't even bother to coordinate. He says the same axis of evil because it's a talking point, but he says Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. So who are we attacking? I'll tell you who they're trying to attack. There's one country there that is in common with McConnell and Netanyahu's axis of evil: Iran. Why are they targeting Iran? So now a lot of people might think, well, I mean, there's a lot of Jewish Americans, they care deeply about Israel, and they're worried that Iran's going to attack them. Iran has shown zero indication of attacking Israel. You could say, hey, they act through their proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas, and that's fair, and that's an interesting conversation to have about how do you put pressure on them to get them to stop doing that. But the idea that Iran itself is going to attack Israel, there's no way Iran would do that because they'd get obliterated, and they know that. Not only would Israel counterattack, but America would. There's no indication of that, and the American government says there's no indication of that. In fact, the American government says there's no indication they helped Hamas with the attack on Israel this time around. No indication, right? So why are they picking on Iran? Because it's not about American Jews that are concerned about Israel. That's not the Iran issue. Evangelicals care about Israel and put a lot more pressure on American politicians than Jewish Americans. The Jewish Americans are generally democratic, very progressive, generally in favor of the two-state solution. Evangelicals are not in favor of that. The crazy evangelical Christians in this country are like, no, we need there to be as much conflict as possible so that everybody kills each other, and then Armageddon happens and there's a giant bloodbath where almost everyone on the planet dies. Yes, and then Lord Jesus comes back. Okay, all right, that's the insanity that they believe in, and that influences our politicians, and that's a huge factor in terms of their base, but that's not the largest factor either. The largest factor is the money, Lebowski. So defense contractors want a war with Iran because they're not a nuclear country, and we know it because we were in a peace deal with them and took all the uranium out of their country. And we have intelligence showing that they have not developed nuclear capabilities. So if you start a war with Russia or China, it might cause World War III and end us all. And defense contractors are like, I want to make money, but my family lives in LA or New York or DC. I don't want them to die. So let's not go pick on Russia or China. We could do proxy wars and stuff, still make a lot of cash through Ukraine. But Iran, that's a perfect target. 4 times as large as Iraq, they make 4 times as much profit. And it'll spread to Lebanon and Syria and Israel and Palestine. And oh my God, millions of people will die. We'll make so much money. So they send all their lobbyists all over cable news, and cable news never tells you that the actual hidden agenda here is to make billions and maybe trillions of dollars for defense contractors, and by the way, also oil companies, because instability in the Middle East causes oil prices to spike, and it's an absolute epic disaster for the rest of us. our kids are going to go die there, let alone the hundreds of thousands of civilians on all sides that are going to die there. Oil prices are going to spike, gas prices, inflation. Everything is going to be a nightmare, but cable news will not tell you that the people causing that nightmare are their beloved, honored guests that they have brought on, and not told you that they're secretly trying to start a war so they can get richer because they work for defense contractors. If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.